because we're already talking about ancient aliens. So let's keep it going here with Liam calling in from Louisiana. They want to hop on the ancient alien topic.
Yeah, just an amusing anecdote. That was a pretty intense call, but the guy in the meme picture? I'm not saying it's aliens. Giorgio Tsoukalos, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I just did the hand thing, but maybe I don't know if you're watching.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I actually run into him. In 2012, he threw a big music festival in New Orleans in association with my Mardi Gras crew I'm in, the Intergalactic Crew of Chewbacca's.
Well, hold on. Can I ask a question?
And yes.
Did he invite any aliens there? Were there any aliens at the party? Music?
Oh, well, I'm sure there was an open invitation.
Well, yeah, I was hoping I assumed he was friends with some or something else, which is why he believes it. But anyway, okay.
Well, the thing is that, when he came down, it was just kind of a business venture for the Mardi Gras crew, and we were kind of worried that he would just be this vanilla, shirt and tie banker, and it would just be a thing he was doing. But it's not. He's a nut. He is a true believer.
Yeah, I don't know much about him, but yeah, I'd be interested, like if the invitation's open for like a spacecraft, if he like leaves the spot open in case they want to fly down and land. But just real quick with him, he's very compelling in some of his arguments. His whole thing is that if you were a spacefaring civilization and you wanted basically planets set up as gas stations throughout the galaxy, what would be the easiest way to do that without a lot of investing your own time and effort? Find primitive species and hand drop a bunch of knowledge on them, and then come back in 1,000 years when they had invented electricity and gasoline. That's basically it. He's got that's kind of hard to argue with. There's no way. I think it's entirely easy to argue with. What's the actual argument, right? Because like someone can just say that, but like, what is the deductive argument where the inference rules lead to that being the conclusion? Because I don't see that. It's for the same reason I don't think that a theist can have a logical entailment from saying like we see facts about DNA, and therefore it must have a God as a designer. I think it lacks the necessary inference rules that one would apply to get there. So like my thing, you don't have to phrase it in like what argue, like, it's hard to argue against it. That isn't your problem. The problem is they need to actually argue for it. Yeah.
It is an extraordinary claim, and maybe not quite as extraordinary as there being an all-powerful being that did it. To me, once you get into ultimates, I'm a skeptic. I would require an infinite amount of proof for the existence of an unlimited power being.
Well, I mean, I'm just talking from the alien standpoint, right? It's like if the guy's saying like, he's giving this conjecture, and what I hear is that that it's hard to argue with. I feel like it misses something in that, like, it's nobody's business to argue with someone's conjecture. It's the guy who's the conjecture's business to provide something more than it just being conjecture. So they have to actually argue for it, not that you have to argue against this idea they have, because like then you'd just be left arguing with any idea anybody ever comes up with about anything.
Yeah, and people could come up with all sorts of different stories to explain why things are the way they are. I mean, that's just I'm not quite familiar with the scenario of who the person is that you guys are talking about, but
it's the guy that's like aliens. And does
okay, like the guy from Ancient Aliens.
That guy, yes.
That guy, like okay.
If I'm thinking correctly, maybe I'm wrong.
They make a lot of claims without very much evidence, but all their story just has to be like somewhat consistent with something that people have thought about. So it's just like I don't know. They could make up the same story about that they use human hair to tie ropes, and so that's why they came down and made humans' hair grow longer on their head. I was just thinking about that because Jmike has long hair, but it's like it is a just so kind of explanation for it. But there's nothing that would give a good reason for us to even consider that to be something worth talking about, because it's I don't know, the evidence isn't there. It's just it's an I don't know if the right word is for it, but
it's imaginary until you can actually show that it's actually some basis of reality.
that's no different than a lot of what is like humans have done throughout all the different years with explanations for things. And before it was, in the theistic, they would explain a lot of things which have to do with like demons or fairies or leprechauns, and like there's always explanations for like different types of things.
Sure,
but there's no real evidence to move forward on why we should even consider those any of those as an explanation for our bigger explanation for things. I think that the ancient aliens story just puts it on a bigger scale, like on like why are humans here. But they also make a lot of missteps too about like the need for something, like basing a lot of it on of like human agriculture, and like that's pretty myopic thinking that this is all humans have ever done is just growth or like dig for gold. Like there's a lot of things there that I think are just sensationalized and just made for entertainment.
Yeah, and the kind of the idea that I'm positing is that like everything that you say that's just an idea or conjecture about the way the world is, right? Like claims about how the world actually operates or what's happened in the past or what continues to happen, that's only gonna be, that only resides in your head, that idea, until you can show that it actually resides in reality somewhere, right? That's, to me, I think that's like the best way to handle it. Claims that people take is to go, okay, you've made a claim. It could just be the case that, that is the case. Like if you told me, you're right, if you got a cat, it's like, I know cats exist. I don't need to, I'll just believe you. But if someone starts talking about things that I have no basis for, like in the last call, and I know he wasn't dying on the hill for it, but to say that aliens best explain something, or this guy, saying, the crazy hair guy saying that, aliens best explain, or whatever argument he has, well, it's really just imaginary. It's just some idea in his head. That's the only thing that has been proven in the case, is that it's an idea in his head, that we can guarantee that's something proven. What we can't prove is that is an actual thing, that is an actual state of affairs in reality. And that's the issue. You don't have to actually go, well, it's a compelling, I don't see how I could argue against it. Well, because he's just disguised conjecture as some argument that's not actually an argument. It's just an idea.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, I get what you're saying 100%. But let me back up just a little bit. And I didn't mean to go so far down this rabbit hole. But
sorry, yeah.
Maybe more interesting. We're having a very logos conversation. I mean, I've got, a bachelor's degree in science. I'm got a decent science background. I'm a very skeptical person, but I know their logical fallacies are flawed. I guess you would say flawed epistemologies, but the other ones are ethos and pathos. And I think we often get in this intellectual sort of, attack on things, which is the right thing to do it. But I think we kind of overlook the fact that, there is a huge percentage of the population that doesn't operate that way. We're talking around them. But when I say compelling, part of what I meant, and this is just sort of a cautionary tale, I know this is flawed, but when you've got somebody that you've seen on television and they're this larger-than-life personality, and just through a quirk of events, you're hanging out with them all day at this event, helping out with the event, the charisma that somebody's got to push an argument, it's amazing to see that in effect. And, something that I never really gave any consideration about aliens, but there's this weird hypnotic sort of thing about somebody who's so passionate and is such a true believer that for a minute you go, wow, wow. I mean, this guy's devoted his life to that. And I know it's flawed, but I think that we underestimate the power that has.
Absolutely. And that's where we need to have a good, I think it's important to have a good idea on how, like, basic kind of how human psychology works, and understanding what our own cognitive biases are, and cognitive distortions are, and why we are or like how it is so easily that humans can the power of suggestion and influence, or groupthink, or like there's a lot of different phenomenon that I think are important to just have a base understanding of, so that you can see through those kind of things where people have learned how to manipulate crowds of people. Because you're right, anybody could come in, and
I've done it.
Yeah,
we talked about this before. This is a perfect time, Erin. I don't want to cut you off, so
no,
I'll mention it at some point.
I want you to tell the story, because I think I think your story is a perfect example of how people are unaware of our own psychology.
Well, Liam, I have an example. Like everyone can go look at this right now. I left the evidence up. I made a TikTok called 5D Developer, right? I was very passionate in detailing that I was a developer that was tasked or I was given the task to basically program so that when you're scrolling through TikTok, all the spiritualists would have their pineal gland blocked, right? And so that essentially when you get on TikTok, this was a way of the government being able to implement this new feature that blocks your pineal gland so you can no longer manifest the things that you want, right? I just made some stuff up, but I said it in such a way that was convincing to spiritualists, and I had a lot of passion about it, and made videos of me coding, which was me coding like a book catalog for school. So like things that like anybody with basic rudimentary knowledge that would see what I'm doing would go, wow, this guy's clearly trolling people. He's not actually like, if you knew what programming is, you would go, yeah, okay, this guy's trolling people just based on what he's showing us. And I got like 15,000 likes the next day. And I had like 3 to 10,000. I don't even remember what it was. It was either 3 to 5,000 or something like that followers the next day, and like 10,000 likes on each subsequent video I did within a few hours. Right? I just made this idea up while I was making pizza in my kitchen. I was like, oh, this would be funny. I was giggling myself, and I did it. And I could have kept going with it, but I decided to say, hey, look, this is what happens when somebody can tell you something very convincingly. That you can appeal to that type of emotion. And you mentioned logos, was pathos and ethos. I think pathos has something to do with appeal to emotion, if I'm not mistaken. And that to me is just essentially that, like you're just going to some emotional aspect to it rather than the logical aspect, which to me that's what matters. There's so many things I want to believe is true, like libertarian free will, but the logical consistency matters to me, not the pathos or how I feel about it or something. So point being is that preachers do this. I've done this. People can do this all the time, but it doesn't actually elucidate what is true in the world. It just elucidates that people are convincing.
That's a great story. I think I can tie this all together. You were talking about evolutionary biology, and something that UFO caller said that left an impression on me. I wrote this down. He said, why do people see natural events and jump to supernatural explanations? And so, evolutionarily, we're wired for certain things like, the reason why fat and sugar taste really good to us is we could hardly ever get it when we're living in hard times. And that's why people get addicted to junk food. Okay. And so a lot of these, conspiracy theories that go around, they seem like junk food for the mind. So I'm wondering if there's a mismatch between our evolutionary wiring to want to know, something keeps you awake at night, you can't sleep, you have anxiety, you want an explanation, and the fact that now we can just Google anything. So to tie it into the sort of moral philosophy idea, if you've got a good skeptical take on reality, but is there a non-removable need in people to have an answer? Is there an onus on us to go with the least harmful untruth? Does that make any sense?
Maybe.
Are you asking like that? Like, is there? I'm not sure if you said like, is there something wrong with it? But like, is it pretty like normal or I mean typical for people to have that desire to have like a story behind their experiences or have something? I can't remember how you worded it. I'm so sorry.
Well, I think he's going to some aspects of like the good. Were you going there? Like you were going into normativity?
Well, earlier you said that something was a true explanation, but also a virtuous explanation. So if people are going to just stop at some point and say, I need an explanation, and we can't necessarily give them both. It's frustrating when creationists try to put this on us to tell them what happened before the Big Bang or some nonsense like that. We don't have to explain everything, but
it can just be a brute fact. You could just deny what's called the PSR and just say it's a brute fact, right? Like you could say not everything has to have an explanation, which I deny the PSR. So someone like myself is going to say, which by the way, the PSR is principle of sufficient reason that everything should have an explanation. But you could just say that it's a brute fact.
And I think there's going to be different people too that are like have different levels of discomfort that they're able to live with as well. I think that there's a lot of people who the idea of not knowing something is unbearable for them, and that's why they will continue to seek out these things that will give them all the explanations that they need. But then there's other people who are they're just the way that they move through their life. They don't have that same kind of existential kind of questions that go on in their head, or maybe they do, but they can learn to live with some of the discomfort of not knowing everything. So I think that would break down into different personal psychologies.
Right, and there probably is a special type of person that just finds an easy theistic answer for everything satisfying, and they don't want to mull it over anymore. But
there's a lot of them.
I guess what I was trying to, yeah, right. And so I guess the question I was trying to ask in a convoluted way, is even though we think we have a better handle on the truth, if we think that someone is incapable of just coming to this high-level, logical, scientific analysis of everything all the time, would it be moral, and I don't have an answer, I'm just asking, to substitute a more harmless untruth? And, instead of religion and people maybe occasionally starting a holy war of saying, oh, all that stuff in the Bible, it was aliens. I really believe that. And to use your trolling powers, would it be moral to convince people of a more harmless lie?
I'm an moral anti-realist, so like my answer might not be satisfactory to a lot of atheists, or maybe it will be, or maybe not even you. So when you talk about should we do something that's good, to me, I get lost on we have to define good and in virtue of what the person holds valuable. But yeah, Erin, I don't know if you want to go on that, because I don't really have
I get what you're saying. I do get what you're saying, because there are some people out there that you could consider the fact of trying to bring them into like a more epistemological, like grounded way of looking at the world, that it could cause them a level of anxiety or stress. I think that I could see how that you may be able to see that as doing harm to somebody. But at the same time, I think that by making a choice for somebody, whether you're just going to allow them to know this much because you've determined that it's not going to be harmful, is denying some sort of autonomy that they have. So obviously, like allowing people to make their own decisions and giving people the resources and the tools to get to a place where they are comfortable with the knowledge that they have. I think that it is obviously, I do think that it's going to be good to believe things that are true. And there are going to be people out there that don't have that high level, like that they value that as much as I do. But I don't think that making a decision to allow people to live with things that are, or to believe in things that are untrue, is going to be a good move for us, I guess. I'm not sure where that fits into moral anti-realism for you to make, Jmike, but
I just think we break that down in like the way that you go, like ought one. Right, it's like the same moral question, like ought you be moral, ought you be good, or ought I care about what you call epistemic norms, right? Like the way that we should conduct epistemology, or the way we should we come to truth? Should we want to know that? For the same reason, from the moral perspective, I think it's like I'm a subjectivist, but I still think every person uses well-being for their basis. I don't think there's an objective fact of the matter. I think everybody uses that, even Christians, right? When they don't want to, they want to go to heaven and not go to hell directly because it relates to their well-being, because they're the ones burning in hell, right? It directly relates to their well-being first. And I think it's the same thing with epistemology or knowing. I would go as far as to say it's not good to give someone like false truths or something like that in effort to get them to learn, if you don't pull the curtain back at some point. Because I'm willing to say everything epistemically, people are going to want to know. If you really, I don't know people that don't want to know. It would seem to be contradictory in their life to make that statement and then go about their life, right? So maybe there's not an objective fact of the matter that we ought to know things that are true. But I think if we break it down, every person practically and pragmatically lives their life that way. And so all we should do in the cases like, say, what I did, for example, and kind of give some lie, is to recognize that does cause harm. Because the thing that I did was go, I can't keep this up for more than a day. Because the first thing I thought of is someone could seriously hurt themselves if they believe what I'm saying, and maybe they're just not stable in some way, or maybe they are and they just completely are convinced of something. So yeah, there's a level of responsibility to when you're going to present things, if that's what your question is. Hopefully I'm hitting it right. But if you're presenting things that could be false in virtue of getting someone to see the error in that way, I mean, you got to pull the curtain back at some point, because otherwise, look, just beliefs in general, whether true or false, can have some impact on society. So,
sure. Yeah, and so I guess I get what you're saying. I like what you're saying, that you have to pull the curtain back eventually. But I guess I'm still pondering, and will probably be pondering for a while, this concept of getting your foot in the door, of taking someone who's just got this unswerving conviction in something that produces harmful behaviors and impinges on the rights of others and things. If you could loosen the grip of that delusion with a more harmless delusion. And I get what you're saying. I'm getting kind of out of my depth. I should probably let you guys move on when it comes to moral philosophy. I'm not studying that. I'm more of a science guy. And in response to Erin, real quick, I think you and I probably just come down on different sides of the question of free will. I'm pretty solid on the concept that even though it doesn't seem fun to believe it, that through meditation practice and from what I know about science, it's pretty mechanistic. I do think that there's a random element in thought sometimes, but I don't really worry about morally restricting the capacity of others to make decisions, pre-decisions and choices, when I think a lot of that is at least 99% an illusion. It's hardwiring, not a popular opinion.
All right.
Anyway, guys, it's been a fantastic conversation. It kind of went in unusual directions. Maybe I'll call back another time and we'll just talk about like hard science stuff, because I do think there's more room and all that. I've had quantum mechanics 101, and there's a lot there to play with, and people use it to justify things, but it's extraordinary in other ways, and that'd be a fun conversation to have sometime.
Yeah. Definitely call us back sometime. This conversation definitely took a couple of turns, but it was really interesting. So thanks for giving us a call. We'll talk to you again sometime.